He thought I was nothing without him. He was very wrong. As Maya walked down the hallway, a beep on her phone signaling the receipt of an email forced her to open the mail. Dear Ms. Hart, as per the board resolution passed on the 2nd of February 2023, your shareholding in the company has been reduced from 30% to 5%. The vacated 25% will be distributed with Mr. Caleb Hart acquiring 20% and the remaining 5% allocated to select investors as per board discretion. Payment arrangements for your buyout shall be finalized within the next 30 days. Kindly acknowledge receipt of this notice. Maya's lips curved into a small, almost imperceptible smile as she read the drafted document. It was a victory, not of the board, not of Caleb, but a quiet personal victory. They had underestimated her, dismissed her, and thought they had ended her. As she left the building, the city seemed larger somehow, the air sharper, the possibilities endless. Every step away from that office was a step toward freedom, toward reclaiming herself, toward building something no one, not even Caleb, her husband of 7 years who had now turned her business opponent, could control. Back in the boardroom, Caleb leaned back in his leather chair, swirling his glass of scotch, speaking softly to himself. She'll fail, she must fail. No one succeeds without me. But even as he said it, a shadow of doubt flickered, a tiny, dangerous doubt, that the woman he had tried to diminish might just be stronger than he had imagined. Here's how it started that day. But before then, please take some time and like this video. Also subscribe to our channel and let me know in the comments where you are watching from. We will be excited to have you join our growing community. The morning sun hadn't yet burned through the city haze when Caleb stormed into their penthouse apartment, his polished shoes clicking sharply against the marble floor, echoing with a tension that Maya had grown used to but never accepted. He didn't knock, didn't pause at the door. Instead, he moved straight into the living room where Maya was perched on the edge of the velvet sofa, a tablet in her hands, reviewing the quarterly projections for their company, Innovexa Solutions. You're still looking at those numbers? Caleb's voice sliced through the quiet, sharp and impatient as he leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, jaw tight. I told you yesterday, Maya, you don't need to be running calculations. That's what I do. That's why they pay me to lead. Maya looked up, her eyes steady, unwavering. Caleb, these are my numbers too, she said, voice calm but firm, setting the tablet down. I have a 30% stake in this company. I deserve to know what's happening, don't I? He laughed, short, sharp, dismissive. 30%, you know what that means to me. He stepped forward, pacing, the cuffs of his shirt glinting under the soft morning light. It means nothing. It's a token. I built this company. You just keep up. You follow. You don't create, Maya. You adapt. Maya's fingers tightened around the edge of the sofa. She didn't rise. She didn't flinch. She had learned long ago that arguing with Caleb in an emotional fit only gave him the satisfaction of victory. Instead, she said, carefully, I've adapted because I believed in us. I believed in the company we started together. And yes, I'm proud of what I contributed, every client, every deal, every negotiation. Don't pretend I haven't been here since day one. Caleb's jaw clenched. Day one, day two, it doesn't matter. I've carried this company on my back, Maya, and now I need to make a decision. The board there with me, and they've decided it's time to reduce your shares. 30% to 5%, that's fair, it's business. Maya felt her heart pound but refused to let it show. 5%? She asked, voice sharp. You can't just strip me of my shares because you decide you don't like me in the boardroom anymore. I can and I will, he said, stepping closer, his face inches from hers. Sign the agreement, Maya, or I kick you out of the company completely. No exceptions, no sympathy, no delays. She didn't move, didn't blink. I won't sign, she said simply. I won't let you take what I earned. I won't let you erase my contribution. Caleb laughed louder this time, throwing his hands into the air as if the absurdity of her resistance amused him. You think I care about your contribution? Don't flatter yourself. You're here because I allowed it. You're here because I tolerated you. And now I'm taking what's mine. Maya rose slowly from the sofa, her eyes cold, determined. If that's how it has to be, she said, voice unwavering, then I'll leave. I'll walk away from this company, Caleb, and mark my words, I won't fail without you. For a moment, Caleb paused, stunned by the firmness in her tone, by the absence of fear in her eyes. Then his expression hardened. Walk away, he spat. You think you can survive without me? Without this company? You're dreaming. You don't have what it takes. Maya didn't reply. Instead, she turned, picked up her bag, and walked out of the apartment, each step deliberate, leaving Caleb fuming in the silence of the empty living room. The sunlight streaming through the windows did nothing to soften the tension. It only highlighted the reality that the woman he had tried to belittle, the woman he thought would always defer to his ego, was gone, at least for now. 3 days later, Caleb convened a special board meeting. Maya arrived, composed, wearing a tailored navy suit, her posture perfect, the image of confidence. The room smelled of polished wood and stale coffee. Tension hovered thickly in the air. Caleb began, addressing the board with his signature charm that masked venom beneath. "Colleagues," he said smoothly, "as you know, we've reached a critical point in the company's growth. Leadership needs to be streamlined. Maya's stake, 30%, is disproportionate to her involvement in recent operations. I propose we reduce it to 5%, effective immediately." Maya's voice cut through the murmurs. "Disproportionate? Caleb, let's not pretend my contributions were minor. You know as well as anyone that I negotiated half our biggest contracts last year. I personally signed the deal with Horizon Tech. I built relationships that doubled our revenue in 3 months." Caleb smirked, waving his hand dismissively. "You were assisting, Maya, let's be honest. You follow instructions. That's different from leading." One of the board members, Jonathan, a longtime investor, frowned. "Caleb, let's stick to facts. Maya was instrumental in client acquisition. The numbers show that." Caleb leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Facts can be interpreted, Jonathan, and interpretation is mine to give. The board agrees streamlining leadership is in the best interest of the company." Maya slammed her hand lightly on the table, the sound echoing sharply. "You don't get to speak for the board. You don't get to erase my stake in the company I co-founded. This is theft under the guise of streamlining. I will not sign any agreement reducing my ownership." The room erupted in whispers. Caleb's wife, the woman he had once charmed with his wit and ambition, now stood defiant. "Maya," he said, voice low and dangerous, "you're being unreasonable. Sign and we all move forward. Refuse and you leave nothing, not just the company, but the respect you imagined you earned." Maya smiled coldly. "I'm not afraid of leaving, Caleb. I've built myself enough to start over. And when I do, you'll see that you underestimated me badly." Maya reached for her folders on the desk. She quickly closed them and stood up from her seat, obviously in disbelief of the action her husband Caleb had exhibited in the boardroom. She walked away, with her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor as she left the boardroom, every step deliberate, controlled, yet heavy with the weight of 1,000 small betrayals she had endured over the years. Caleb sat at the head of the table, fingers drumming impatiently, jaw tight, watching her retreating figure with barely concealed rage. "You're making a huge mistake, Maya," he said, voice low, dangerous. "You don't understand what you're throwing away." She didn't turn, she didn't speak. Nothing she had said in the past hours had been heard. Every word had been met with smirks, dismissive gestures, and now, this final, humiliating push. The board, sensing Caleb's frustration but unwilling to challenge him directly, quietly proceeded with formalities. The secretary tapped away on her laptop, drafting the official letter to Maya. A formal notification of her reduction in shares from 30% to 5%, as per the board resolution Caleb had engineered. The financial controller was already preparing the documents for the takeover of the vacated 25% shares, with Caleb himself to claim 20%, and the remaining 5% reserved for undisclosed investors, a move shrouded in secrecy. Caleb leaned back in his chair, voice dripping with false magnanimity. "Maya," he said, finally allowing the words to spill, "we're giving you a fair exit. You'll be paid off. This is the best any reasonable person could hope for." Maya paused at the doorway, her hand resting lightly on the polished brass handle, eyes narrowing. "Fair," she said softly, almost to herself, but loud enough for the nearest board members to hear. "You call taking everything I've built, everything I've contributed, and giving me a pittance fair?" One of the board members, uncomfortable with the confrontation, cleared his throat. "Mr. Caleb, perhaps this is necessary to preserve the company's growth trajectory." Caleb shot the man a glare that silenced him instantly. "Necessary," he repeated, more to himself than anyone else. "Necessary for vision, for leadership, for success." Maya's heart pounded, but she kept her composure. She had rehearsed this moment countless times in her mind, and now it had arrived, the culmination of years of hard work, endless nights and quiet sacrifices, all dismissed as though she had never existed. She turned slightly, addressing Caleb directly. "You can take the glory, you can take the shares, you can take the titles, but remember this," she said, voice calm, firm, unwavering. "Taking away my stake doesn't take away my skill. It doesn't take away my vision, and it certainly doesn't take away my determination." Caleb's smile was thin, almost imperceptible, but beneath it, a flicker of unease passed through his eyes. "We'll see about that," he said, dismissive, already signaling to the secretary to finish the letter. The secretary, hands trembling slightly under the weight of the tension, typed the formal notice to Maya. Later that evening, the air was crisp as Caleb's car pulled into the driveway of the home. The low hum of the city beyond was muffled by the tall walls surrounding their property. He stepped out, briefcase in hand, his polished shoes clicking sharply against the cobblestone path leading to the front door. Every step carried a mix of irritation and urgency, the kind of urgency that comes when a man feels his control slipping. Inside, Maya was in the kitchen methodically chopping vegetables for dinner, her movements calm, deliberate, almost mechanical. The clink of the knife against the cutting board punctuated the quiet like a metronome. She didn't look up as Caleb's key turned in the lock, nor as the door opened with a soft click. "Caleb," she said lightly, still focused on her task, "you're home early." "I need to talk," he said, dropping his briefcase with a thud in the hallway, the sound echoing through the high ceilings. His voice carried a weight, equal parts command and persuasion. "Now." Maya set the knife down slowly, wiping her hands on a towel, her expression calm but alert. "We've said everything we need to say today, Caleb." He stepped into the kitchen, closing the distance between them in deliberate strides, hands clenched loosely at his sides. "No, Maya, we haven't. You're my wife. This isn't just about the board, the shares, the percentages. This is about us, our life, our family." Maya's eyes met his, steady, unflinching. "I don't care about this discussion anymore," she said firmly. "You've made your choice today and I'll make mine." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Making your choice?" He leaned against the counter beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat of his body, but she didn't flinch. "Maya, think about this. Stripping you of your shares, it's for stability, for the good of the family, for us. You know that, don't you?" She shook her head slowly, stepping around him to the living room, her heels clicking on the wooden floors. "I don't care about your justifications anymore. You've done what you wanted in the boardroom. You've taken what you think is yours. I'm done listening to speeches about family when it's really about control." Caleb followed her, his hands gesturing, trying to bridge the gap between them. "Control? Maya, it's not about control, it's about vision. You know I have the company's and our family's best interests at heart. You have to see that." Maya paused at the window, looking out over the quiet street below. "Best interests at heart," she echoed, her voice low but sharp. "Caleb, you don't get to dress up greed and ego as concern for family. I've worked every bit as hard as you. Every client, every negotiation, every deal I built this to. And now you act as if I'm nothing." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "You think you've done everything? Maya, you're exaggerating. You were never leading. You were following. I carried the company. I made it happen." Maya turned to face him fully, her hands planted firmly on her hips, her gaze cold, unwavering. "Following? Caleb, I negotiated the Horizon Tech deal. I built relationships that doubled our revenue in 3 months. I've made you look good in front of everyone, and now you're trying to erase that with a signature and a board resolution." Caleb's face darkened, his hands dropping to his sides. "It's not personal, Maya, it's business." "Business?" she shot back. "Then why is it always personal when it comes to me? Why is it always my worth that you diminish?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice, almost pleading. "Because I'm trying to protect what we have. If people see division, if the board questions us, it could ruin everything, our life together, our marriage." Maya shook her head, exhaling slowly. "I'm done trying to protect a life that doesn't respect me, Caleb. I'm done negotiating with you on my own worth. You can have your control, your shares, your glory. I'll have mine, my skill, my vision, my independence. That's all I need." Caleb froze, the words hitting harder than he expected. Maya moved past him, each step measured and confident as she went to the living room, picked up her bag, and paused by the door to the balcony. She rested her hand lightly on the brass handle, her eyes glinting with quiet resolve. "Remember this," she said softly, loud enough for him to hear. "I didn't leave because I feared losing. I left because I refused to stay small for someone else's ego. One day, Caleb, you'll see that underestimating me was the biggest mistake of your life. Caleb's hand clenched into a fist at his side. We'll see about that, he muttered, almost to himself, as Maya stepped onto the balcony, letting the night air wash over her. That night, Caleb sat alone in the living room, glass of scotch untouched on the side table, the weight of her words pressing down on him. Maya, in her study upstairs, meticulously went through plans, charts, and ideas for the next chapter of her career, a career that no one, not even Caleb, could diminish. Weeks later, he printer hummed softly in the corner of the small law office as Maya signed the final document, her pen moving with deliberate calm across the paper. One signature, then another. Her name looked unfamiliar there, not because it was new, but because for the first time in years it stood alone, not beside Caleb's. Congratulations, Mrs. Hart, the lawyer said, sliding the file toward her. As of today, Oralia Systems Limited is officially registered. You are the sole founder and chief executive. Maya exhaled slowly. Not relief, not joy, something steadier, heavier, like a foundation being poured. Thank you, she said simply. She stood, adjusted her jacket, and shook the lawyer's hand. When she stepped back into the sunlit street, the city noise rushed at her, horns blaring, vendors shouting, footsteps pounding pavement. Life moving, unaware, unconcerned. And yet for Maya, everything had changed. She didn't rush home. Instead, she walked 3 blocks down, unlocked a glass door with a temporary paper sign taped to it. Inside, the space was bare, no furniture yet, no branding, just white walls, dust, and echoes. Maya stood in the middle of the room, heels clicking once as she turned slowly in a circle. This will do, she whispered. That night, Caleb came home late. The duplex door opened sharply, his keys tossed onto the console table with irritation. His suit jacket was slung over his shoulder, his tie loosened aggressively, as though the fabric itself had offended him. Maya was in the dining area, laptop open, papers neatly stacked beside her. She didn't look up when he entered. You were busy today, Caleb said, pouring himself a drink. Didn't answer my calls. I was working, Maya replied. He scoffed. On what? Retirement plans. She finally looked at him, calm, direct. I started my company today. The glass froze halfway to his lips. Your what? My company, she repeated. Oralia Systems Limited, registered this morning. I'm the founder, CEO, sole shareholder. Silence slammed into the room. Then Caleb laughed. A loud, barking laugh that bounced off the walls. You're joking. I'm not. He set the glass down slowly. Maya, don't embarrass yourself. Starting a company is not the same as running one. You don't just wake up and... I didn't wake up today and decide this, she cut in. I've been planning it for months, years actually. Caleb shook his head, smiling like a man indulging a child. This is exactly what I warned the board about, emotional decisions, pride projects. Call it whatever you like, Maya said. It exists. The next morning, emails went out. Not loud announcements, not press releases, just quiet personal messages written carefully, strategically, to clients Maya had personally onboarded over the years. I've started a new firm. Same integrity, faster execution, more focus. If you're ever open to a conversation, my door is open. By noon, replies started coming in. By evening, the first meeting was scheduled. Within a week, 3 Innovexa clients terminated their contracts. Caleb found out in the boardroom. What do you mean they're leaving? He snapped, standing abruptly as papers slid across the table. The account manager swallowed. They cited leadership alignment issues they've already signed letters of intent with. With who? Caleb demanded. No one answered. Caleb's eyes narrowed. Say it. Oralia Systems. The room went quiet. Caleb laughed again, but this time it sounded wrong, forced, cracked. So she's poaching, he said. Cute, she won't last. That night at a charity dinner, Caleb held court like nothing was wrong. Maya, he said loudly when someone asked about her absence. She's experimenting, you know how she is. Little side projects, she doesn't have what it takes to scale. People nodded politely. Some didn't. Across the table, one investor leaned in. Funny thing is, Caleb, 2 of my partners just moved their contracts to her company. They said she was sharper, more decisive. Caleb's smile tightened. temporary confusion. Weeks passed. Oralia Systems hired 10 staff, then 20. Maya worked the floor, no corner office, no inflated titles. She sat with engineers, negotiated personally, rewrote proposals at midnight. Caleb watched from the outside, still boasting. "At home, Maya, be honest," he said one night, loosening his cufflinks. "Without me, you wouldn't even know where to begin." She didn't argue, she didn't explain. She just opened her laptop and turned it toward him. Quarterly projections, growth charts, client acquisition curves. Caleb stared, said nothing. For the first time, his silence was louder than his words. Back at Oralia Systems Limited, the office didn't look impressive. T was on the third floor of a modest commercial building, paint still smelling faintly new, cables running loosely along the walls, desks borrowed rather than bought. But the energy inside it was sharp, alive, purposeful. Maya stood at the whiteboard, sleeves rolled up, marker squeaking as she sketched workflows. "We don't copy Innovexa," she said to the 6 people seated around the table. "We outthink them, faster turnaround, clear accountability, no bloated approvals." One of the engineers leaned forward. "Do you really think clients will leave a giant for us?" Maya didn't hesitate. They already are. That afternoon, her phone buzzed. "Client, Horizon Logistics. We've decided to terminate our Innovexa contract effective next quarter. We prefer to move forward with Oralia Systems under your leadership." Maya closed her eyes for half a second, not in triumph, but in composure, then replied professionally. Across town, Caleb was pacing. "This is sabotage," he snapped at his operations director. "She's using insider knowledge." "No, sir," the director said carefully. "She's using relationships." Caleb slammed his palm on the table. "Relationships I built." The director didn't respond. The silence itself disagreed. That evening at home, Caleb tried a different tone. He poured wine, set the table himself, even smiled. "Maya," he said casually, "you're making noise, unnecessary noise." She took a sip. "Growth tends to do that." "You're embarrassing yourself," he continued. "People are laughing, they say you're trying to prove something." Maya set her glass down. "I am." "And what happens when you fail?" he asked. "When clients realize you can't sustain this?" She looked at him steadily. "Then I'll adjust, that's business." Caleb scoffed. "No, that's ego." Weeks turned into months. At industry mixers, Caleb grew louder. "My wife," he said to anyone listening. "She's ambitious, I'll give her that, but she doesn't have the backbone, she doesn't see the big picture. Innovexa is the brain, she's enthusiasm." Maya stood beside him more than once, smiling politely, refusing to rise to the bait. Later in the car, he'd shake his head. "You should thank me. Without my name, without my reputation, doors wouldn't even open for you." She replied calmly, "Then why are they closing for you?" That question lingered longer than any argument. By the 6th month, Oralia Systems had overtaken Innovexa in 2 major verticals. Caleb's board meetings became hostile. "Why are we losing clients?" one investor demanded. Caleb straightened. "Temporary displacement, market fluctuation." Another board member leaned in. "Displacement to your wife's company." A pause. Caleb's jaw tightened. "She's irrelevant." But the numbers on the screen told a different story. That night, Caleb came home unusually quiet. Maya was reviewing payroll schedules. "You're bleeding Innovexa dry," he said suddenly. She didn't look up. "Innovexa is bleeding itself." "You're enjoying this," he accused. "No," she said, "I'm working." His voice rose. "You're proving a point at my expense." She finally met his eyes. "No, Caleb, I'm proving a point despite you." Silence filled the duplex. Outside, rain began tapping the windows, soft at first, then insistent. Caleb turned away. "You'll hit a ceiling." Maya spoke gently, almost kindly. "You already have." By the end of that year, Oralia Systems was no longer a startup story. It was a threat, a presence, a name spoken without reference to Innovexa. And for the first time since they had built a company together, Caleb realized something unsettling. Maya had not left him. She had not fought him. She had not needed revenge. She had simply outgrown him. The collapse did not arrive loudly. It came in fragments. A delayed payment here. A resigned executive there. A once loyal client suddenly restructuring priorities. Caleb stood in the Innovexa boardroom, staring at a quarterly report that refused to lie, his fingers gripping the edge of the table as if the wood might steady him. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. The financial controller cleared his throat. "It does, sir. We're over-leveraged. Operational costs are high, and client churn has exceeded projections." Caleb snapped his head up. "Because of her?" No one responded. Another board member finally spoke, cautious but firm. "Caleb, Oralia Systems isn't stealing clients. Clients are choosing them. Maya built something efficient." Caleb laughed sharp, hollow. "Efficient, I built this market." "But she built trust," the board member replied quietly. That sentence landed harder than any accusation. Industry blogs began whispering. Then reporting. Then headlining. Innovexa Solutions faces internal crisis amid leadership strain. Oralia Systems surges as Innovexa loses market share. Caleb read every article twice, jaw clenched, searching for praise that never came. At home, the dynamic shifted, subtly at first. Maya no longer asked about Innovexa. Caleb no longer boasted. One evening he watched her reviewing documents, calm, focused, unbothered. "You're everywhere," he said suddenly. She glanced up. "Am I?" "Panels, interviews, awards," he scoffed. "They're calling you visionary now." Maya closed her laptop. "They're calling the work visionary." "You don't even need me anymore," he said, almost accusingly. She studied him for a long moment. "I never did." The words weren't cruel, just honest. And honesty, Caleb was discovering, could be brutal. The Innovexa board meeting that ended everything was scheduled for 10 minutes. It lasted 4 hours. By the end, Caleb sat alone. The board had voted. The investors had pulled. The company would wind down operations within the quarter. Caleb stared at the empty chairs. No applause. No send-off. No legacy speech. Just silence. That night he didn't sleep. At dawn, he made a decision he had once sworn he never would. Maya was already in her office when the receptionist buzzed. "Ma'am, your husband is here." Maya exhaled slowly. "Send him in." Caleb entered hesitantly, stripped of the confidence that once preceded him. No entourage, no charm, just a man carrying the weight of his own words. "I won't take much time," he said. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Sit." He didn't at first. "I was wrong," he said, voice tight. "About you, about the company, about everything." Maya listened without interrupting. "I built Innovexa," he continued, "but I destroyed it by refusing to see you as an equal." She leaned back. "Go on." "I want to be part of Oralia," he said quietly. "I can contribute, strategically, operationally, I know the market." The room felt still. Maya stood and walked to the window, the city unfolding below, a city that now knew her name. She turned back. "No," she said. Caleb flinched. "You don't get to diminish someone for years," she continued, "then ask for shelter when your storm arrives." "I'm not asking for pity," he said. "I know," she replied. "You're asking for relevance." She softened but did not bend. "You should build something new," she said. "Something that doesn't need to stand on anyone else." Caleb nodded slowly, shame flickering across his face. "I thought I was your backbone," he whispered. Maya met his eyes. "You were my lesson." Months later, Caleb sat alone at a cafe, watching a televised interview. The host smiled at Maya. "People say you rose from being underestimated. What's your secret?" Maya smiled calmly. "I stopped arguing with people who couldn't see me, and started building where they couldn't stop me." Caleb turned off the screen. For the first time, there was no bitterness, only understanding. He had mistaken control for leadership, noise for intelligence, ego for vision. And by the time he learned the difference, the woman he once tried to shrink had already outgrown the room. Sometimes the greatest mistake a person makes is believing someone else's strength depends on their approval. And sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can do to another human being is underestimate what they'll become once they stop asking for permission. Because when someone proves they were never nothing without you, they don't come back to prove it twice. If you found this story interesting, please remember to like this video and hit the subscribe button. Also turn on the notification so you don't miss out on any of our amazing videos. And lastly, endeavor to share this video with your friends. Thank you and see you in the next video.